Why does the Russian Church live by the old calendar? As is well known, the Russian Orthodox Church uses the Julian calendar in its liturgical life. In Orthodox publications, defenders of the Julian calendar usually rely on two main arguments. The first argument is that the Julian calendar has been sanctified by centuries of use in the Church, and there are no serious reasons to abandon it. The second argument is that if the Church switches to the so-called new style while trying to preserve the traditional Paschal system, the method of calculating the date of Pascha or Easter, many contradictions arise. As a result, violations of the liturgical typikon, the Church's worship order, become inevitable. So let's first see how calendars are built. To measure time and create a calendar, humanity can use any natural process that repeats regularly and evenly. For example, the change of day and night, the phases of the moon, the change of seasons, and so on. All of these are connected to astronomical objects. In the book of Genesis, we read, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." Genesis 1:14 through 16. The Julian calendar is built precisely with these three major astronomical realities in mind: the sun, the moon, and the stars. This gives us reason to call it a truly biblical calendar. The Gregorian calendar, simpler in purpose, poorer in connection. The Gregorian calendar, unlike the Julian, is based on only one object, the sun. It is designed so that the spring equinox, the moment when day and night are equal in length, stays as close as possible to March 21st. But there is a price for this precision. The calendar loses its connection to the moon and the stars. It becomes more complicated and it loses the natural rhythm that the Julian calendar has. Two types of years. There are two important ways to measure a year. The first one, the sidereal or star year. This is the time it takes the sun to return to the same position among the stars. When people say that the sun passes through the 12 zodiac signs in a year, they're talking about the sidereal year. For example, Saint Basil the Great of the 4th century in his Hexameron writes, "The solar year is the return of the sun by its own movement from a certain sign back to the same sign." And the second one is the tropical year. This year is based on the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. How long is a year? The Julian year is 365.25 days long. It stands between the sidereal and tropical years. The Gregorian year is 365.2425 days long. This is very close to the tropical year. Why calendars are always a compromise? Creating a calendar involves two separate tasks. First, astronomers must measure how long natural cycles actually last. For example, the lengths of both the sidereal and tropical years were measured very accurately as early as the 2nd century BC by the Greek astronomer Hipparchus. Second, mathematicians must create a practical system that stays reasonably close to nature and is simple enough to use in everyday life. These two goals often conflict with each other. Let's go to a simple example. Let's say we want a calendar based on the tropical year, which lasts about 365.2422 days. We know that a year can only have 365 or 366 days. A leap year adds one extra day. So we must decide how often to add that extra day and how to make the rule as simple as possible. In other words, we choose a cycle of n years, where m years are leap years. The fraction m divided by n should be close to 0.2422. But the closer we try to get, the more complicated the system becomes. The Julian solution. The simplest solution is one leap year every 4 years. That's the Julian calendar. Average year length, 365.25 days. Error, about 11 minutes per year. One full day of error builds up every 128 years. This is simple, regular, easy to remember. Now, Gregorian solution. The Gregorian calendar uses a much more complex rule. In a 400-year cycle, there are 97 leap years. Some years divisible by 100 are not leap years, unless they are also divisible by 400. This gives average year length 365.2425 days. Error, about 26 seconds per year. One full day of error builds up after 3,333 years. Yes, it is more accurate, but much more complicated. So even as a solar calendar, its advantage is not as obvious as it seems. But what about the moon? The moon goes through its phases in about 29.53 days. This is called a synodic month. Since a year cannot contain a whole number of lunar months, ancient calendars used a 19-year cycle known as the Metonic cycle. In this cycle, 19 years equal 235 lunar months. This means that after 19 years, the moon phases repeat on nearly the same calendar dates. Accuracy comparison. Julian calendar error in this cycle smaller, Gregorian calendar error larger. In simple terms, the Julian calendar matches the moon better. Why the Julian calendar feels whole. The Julian calendar combines simplicity, only a 4-year cycle, rhythm, and harmony with the sun, moon, and stars. It is also practical. Each century has the same number of days. Time flows continuously without artificial jumps. By contrast, the Gregorian reform broke continuity by skipping days. Now, 2 remarkable facts. First, it is striking how close the true length of the year is to such a simple fraction, 1/4. Second, and even more remarkable, the Julian calendar was never used anywhere until the 1st century BC. So what happened before Julius Caesar? Ancient Egypt used a calendar of 365 days exactly. It slowly drifted through the seasons. Attempts to fix it failed. Even reforms proposed by pharaohs and kings were abandoned. The turning point. Finally, history reached a decisive moment. Just before the time of incarnation of Christ, in 45 BC, Julius Caesar introduced a new calendar across the Roman Empire. It was designed by Alexandrian astronomers led by Sosigenes. This calendar, the Julian calendar, governed Europe for over 1,600 years until the 16th century. The Gregorian Reform. In 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduced the Gregorian calendar. 10 days were removed overnight. Many universities protested. Catholic countries accepted it quickly. Protestant countries resisted, some for centuries. Russia switched to the civil Gregorian calendar only in 1918 under the Bolsheviks. About Pascha, Easter. The method of calculating Pascha is the most important issue when comparing calendars for church use. But this topic requires both scientific and theological discussion and lies beyond the scope of this episode. We will only note this. The creators of the Orthodox Paschal system pursued the same goal as the creators of the Julian calendar: maximum simplicity with reasonable accuracy. Thank you for listening. Church Slavonic Practicum.